The Pig War. How one piece of bacon made two empires. Face off for 12 years. What if I told you that in 1859, the United States and Britain almost triggered World War III? The cause? A pig. Specifically, an Irish farmer's pig that was shot by an American farmer. This led to a 12-year standoff between the two nations, with warships deployed and thousands of soldiers stationed. And the most amazing part? During those 12 years, not a single person died, except for one pig. Chapter 1. The Ambiguous Border in the Pacific Northwest. In 1846, the United States and Britain signed the Oregon Treaty. This treaty established the 49th parallel as the border between the two countries. The problem was the islands in the Pacific. The treaty stated that the boundary line follows the main channel of Georgia Strait. But it wasn't clear which was the main channel. The British claimed the Rosario Strait was the main channel, while Americans insisted it was the Haro Strait. Caught in between was San Juan Island. This beautiful island was 174 square kilometers, about 1/4 the size of Seoul. It might seem insignificant, but strategically, it was in a very important position. From 1853, American settlers began arriving on the island one by one. Simultaneously, Britain's Hudson's Bay Company claimed the island as their territory and operated sheep farms there. Conflict was inevitable. Chapter 2. The Meeting of Lyman Cutler and Charles Griffin. In spring 1859, about 25 American settlers lived on San Juan Island. One of them was a farmer named Lyman Cutler, who was peacefully cultivating potato fields. Right next door was the Hudson's Bay Company's Bellevue Farm. The farm manager was an Irishman named Charles Griffin, who raised sheep and pigs. The problem was that Griffin's pigs roamed freely. According to British common law, it was the farmer's responsibility to prevent livestock damage, meaning Cutler should have fenced his fields. But American common law was different. Livestock owners were responsible for ensuring their animals didn't damage others' property, meaning Griffin should have contained his pigs. The two men were living under different legal systems. Growing conflict was natural. Chapter 3. The Fateful June 15th. On the morning of June 15, 1859, Cutler again discovered his potato field had been damaged. Griffin's large bore had spent the night digging up potatoes. Cutler was angry. He'd already asked Griffin several times to contain his pigs, but had been ignored. What made him angrier was witnessing the pig eating potatoes in his garden. Enough! Cutler ran home to get his gun. Then he pulled the trigger on the pig. One shot killed it. Griffin came running. Why did you kill my pig? Because your pig ruined my potatoes. Then you should have built a fence. You should have penned your pig. The two men argued fiercely. Griffin demanded $100 for the pig, equivalent to 3 months' average wages at the time. Cutler refused. $10 is enough. Thus began the Pig War. Chapter 4. The Arrival of British Authorities. Griffin reported to the British magistrate, who ordered Cutler's arrest. On June 19th, British officials appeared at Cutler's house. Lyman Cutler, you are under arrest for willful destruction of British property. Wait a minute, Cutler shouted. This is American soil. No, this is British territory. Then as an American citizen, I demand trial in an American court. The British officials were flustered. They hadn't anticipated this situation. Eventually, they had to return empty-handed. But Cutler was frightened. They could come back any time. He and other American settlers requested help from Washington Territory authorities. Please protect us. The British are trying to arrest us. Chapter 5. The Arrival of Captain George Pickett. Washington Territory Governor Isaac Stevens immediately responded. He ordered the military in Olympia to send troops to San Juan Island. The chosen unit was Company D of the 9th Infantry Regiment, commanded by Captain George Pickett. Yes, that's right. The same Pickett who would later become famous for Pickett's Charge in the Civil War. On July 27th, Pickett and 64 soldiers landed on San Juan Island. They established field fortifications at the southern end of the island and raised the American flag. Pickett's orders were clear. Protect American citizens from arrest by British authorities, but do not fire first. British officials were shocked. American troops had occupied the island over a single pig. British Columbia Governor James Douglas immediately sent an urgent telegram to London. Americans have illegally occupied San Juan Island. Request instructions. Simultaneously, he ordered the Royal Navy to send warships. Chapter 6. The beginning of naval standoff. In early August, Royal Navy warships began appearing in waters around San Juan Island. HMS Tribune, HMS Satellite, HMS Boundary, a total of 5 warships and 2,140 Marines surrounded 64 American soldiers. The ratio was 33-1. British Naval Commander Admiral Geoffrey Hornby notified Pickett, "Withdraw immediately, or we will launch an amphibious assault." Pickett's response was simple. "We are here under orders and will not move until we receive withdrawal orders." Hornby was flustered. Should he really start a war? Over a single pig? But Pickett was surprisingly calm. He knew the British wouldn't attack first. Britain was too burdened to start a war over a pig. Both sides stared at each other for several days in tense standoff. Chapter 7. Arrival of reinforcements. In Washington, D.C., Western Army Commander General Winfield Scott was shocked to hear the news. He received reports that Pickett was facing off with British forces. "Is this idiot trying to start a war?" Scott immediately headed for San Juan Island, but he also sent reinforcements just in case. On August 10th, General William Harney arrived with 460 troops. American forces had increased 8-fold. General Harney was much more hardline than Pickett. He warned the British, "This island is American territory. If British forces land, we will resist." The British didn't remain idle either. More warships arrived and additional Marines stood by on Vancouver Island. By late August, the British had assembled 31 warships with 2,270 troops, while Americans had 461 troops on San Juan Island. A single pig had brought 2 empires to the brink of war. Chapter 8. General Scott's mediation. On September 9th, General Winfield Scott finally arrived at San Juan Island. He was appalled by what he saw. All this over a single pig? Scott immediately relieved General Harney and ordered Pickett to de-escalate tensions. Then he began discussing solutions with British Governor Douglas. Scott's proposal was realistic. Each nation would station only 100 troops on the island. The boundary would be set by dividing the island in half. The territorial dispute would be resolved diplomatically. Governor Douglas agreed. He didn't want war over a pig either. On October 21st, both nations signed a provisional agreement. British forces would station 100 troops at the island's northern end, Americans at the southern end. Thus began the state of joint occupation. Chapter 9. 12 Years of Peaceful Standoff. From 1859 to 1872, for 13 years, a strange peace continued on San Juan Island. Soldiers from both nations lived on the same island while being subject to different national laws. Interestingly, the two camps gradually became friendly. British and American officers regularly met to drink and play card games. Soldiers played football together and went fishing. At Christmas, they exchanged gifts, and at New Year's, they held parties together. In 1860, British soldiers even performed a play for the Americans. The funniest incident occurred in 1864. During the American Civil War, British officers worried about and consoled American soldiers about the war situation. "Don't worry, Lincoln will win." "Thanks, but why are we facing off against each other again?" Both sides knew how ridiculous this situation was. During 13 years, there wasn't a single armed conflict. The only casualty was a British soldier who accidentally shot himself. Chapter 10. German Kaiser's Arbitration and End of War. In 1871, both governments decided they could no longer continue this ridiculous situation. They began looking for a third country to arbitrate the San Juan Island dispute. The chosen nation was the German Empire. Specifically, German Kaiser Wilhelm I became the arbitrator. Why Germany? First, Germany had no stake in this dispute. Second, The newly unified German Empire wanted international recognition of its status. Third, Kaiser Wilhelm had a good reputation as a fair arbitrator. On October 21, 1872, the German Kaiser's judgment was announced. The San Juan Islands belonged to the United States. The reason was simple. The Haro Strait was the actual main channel, so all islands west of this strait were American territory. Britain accepted this decision. They had actually expected this result. Relations with America were more important than San Juan Island's strategic value. On November 25th, British forces withdrew from the island. The Union Jack was lowered, and only the stars and stripes fluttered in the wind. The Pig War was over. Chapter 11. The real meanings of the war. Was the Pig War just a funny story? Actually, this incident reveals several important aspects of mid-19th century international politics. First, imperial-era border disputes. The 19th century was when Western powers were dividing up the world. The San Juan Island dispute was typical of conflicts arising from this boundary-setting process. Second, media's role. Both nations' media exaggerated this incident. Headlines reading, U.S. and Britain on brink of war, sold newspapers. But in reality, neither government wanted war. Third, local officials' independence. This incident shows how dangerous local officials acting beyond central government control can be. Both the Washington Territory governor and British Columbia governor mobilized military forces without their home government's instructions. Fourth, possibility of peaceful resolution. Ultimately, this dispute was resolved peacefully through diplomacy and arbitration. It's a model case of resolution through law and reason rather than force. Chapter 12. What happened to the characters? What became of the Pig War's protagonists? Lyman Cutler. The man who shot the pig continued living on San Juan Island until 1890, farming there for life. He was proud of causing an international dispute. George Pickett. When the Civil War began, he joined the Confederacy. He led Pickett's charge at the 1863 Battle of Gettysburg, but suffered devastating defeat. After the war, he worked in insurance until his death in 1875. Charles Griffin. The pig's owner remained on San Juan Island even after British forces withdrew. He became an American citizen and continued operating his farm. The pig. The only fatality. Well, it was probably deliciously eaten. Cutler wouldn't have wasted a $100 pig. San Juan Island. It's now a beautiful tourist destination in Washington state. The sites where both armies were stationed are preserved as historical parks called American Camp and English Camp. Lessons we can learn from the Pig War. First, it shows how small conflicts can escalate into major problems. One pig caused two empires to face off for 12 years. But it also shows peaceful resolution is possible through dialogue and compromise. Second, borders and territory are human concepts. Nature knows no borders. Pigs, potatoes, and seas don't care about boundary lines. The problem is human possessiveness and pride. Third, sometimes avoiding war is a greater victory than winning war. Both nations avoided war for 13 years and ultimately resolved it peacefully. The real winners were everyone who didn't have to fight. Finally, history is sometimes really funny. Many disputes we take seriously might seem as ridiculous as the Pig War in hindsight. So next time you have a conflict with someone, think, is this really important enough to go to war over a pig? Next episode, The War of the Stray Dog. How a simple border guard dog wandering across the Bulgaria-Greece frontier in 1925 triggered a full-scale international crisis that nearly dragged the entire Balkans into war. One confused dog, 50 dead soldiers, and League of Nations emergency meetings. Sometimes it's not pigs or ears that start wars. Sometimes it's man's best friend gone astray.